And in the studio with me is my old buddy, George DiCaprio. And George is the executive producer of Ice on Fire, this new movie that is free to watch on HBO, hbo.com. Just go to the free movies and you can see it. This new documentary on the environment. It was narrated by your son, Leonardo. I'm in it. You and I worked diligently on this thing, and Lila and I and others traveled around the world to make this movie. And that's really cool. But you were also, and by the way, welcome back, George.
Thank you.
Sorry about I just tend to blither here. You and Peggy were married by Timothy Leary. Timothy Leary changed my life when I was 16, 17 years old. Reading two of his books, The Politics of Ecstasy, and I forget the title of the other one, and experiencing acid literally changed my life. And I think he's changed your life as well. And you've got some amazing stories that you've told me over the years about Tim Leary.
Well, what a wonderful man. And to think of the things that he went through, he was really a very serious psychologist, a studied man with degrees in Harvard. And he seems to have stumbled across a threshold, a therapeutic threshold that might help people. And look what he went through. I think that he was in jail 40 different times. He was chased around by the government and by Nixon and by the American press and just hounded and vilified. And he was so undeserving. He was such a wonderful man with a wonderful sense of humor, really tried to maintain his smile in the grimmest situations and did hilarious things. And it seems that when he was working at Harvard, he developed a psychological profiling system called the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Test. Flash forward 10 years, he's captured, he's put in prison, and guess what? They hand him his own test.
They gave him the MMPI.
Yeah, right? He takes the test and does it so successfully that they believe he's the most submissive person, and they put him basically kind of on an honor farm in San Luis Obispo. Immediately, he sets about a plan to escape involving the weathermen and secret meetings and stuff and codes with Rosemary, and gets out. Then he goes on a 2-year run around as a fugitive, hiding from the law, and lands in Algeria, where Algeria had just become a free state that was welcoming all the revolutionary people of the world. And he checks into a hotel, and the hotel there is full of the Bader Meinhof gang, the Red Gang, Eldridge Cleaver, the Panthers, people from Korea who are just hugging trees. And he shows up with a transistor radio full of 100,000 micrograms of acid. Of course, he got in trouble, you know.
Ouch.
But the anecdote that I really wanted to start to tell about was later on in his life, he had to quiet down, and he did. And he got really involved in computer technology very early on and erected a thing called the Tabernacle, which was a lot of his theories and also what drugs he was taking that day. That was why people checked in. Mm-hmm. But in the last few months of his life, he was playing with an idea of having his brain cryonically preserved in a jug of liquid nitrogen so that he would be disinterred maybe in 100 years from now. And he was almost going to go through it, and then he said, no, I would hate it if they thawed me out and it was a Republican administration. So.
Now, he actually ran for governor of California against Ronald Reagan, and right after he announced that run, he found himself in jail.
That's completely correct and absolutely accurate. That's what happened. And we all believe that he was set up and put in jail because Reagan was afraid of being in a debate with him.
Wow.
Because there was nobody faster on his feet. It was, he called himself Lapin Agile, which means fast rabbit, and he certainly was. He was a swift guy. He was a swift guy. I'm glad I knew him, and it was a privilege to be married by him.
Yeah, yeah. I wish I had had an opportunity to get to know. I knew very well one of his students, one of his acolytes, a guy named Keith St. Clair, who came to East Lansing back in what must have been '67. I was 16 when I met him, but I never, I never got to know Tim. You also I think we have got about 3 minutes here, 2.5 minutes before we hit this break. You also wanted to comment about. I'm on book tour for The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. You just read the book. You wanted to offer some thoughts.
Well,
and I'm not asking for an endorsement here.
No, I'll be happy
you
to give one.
specifically
The
said
book
that you wanted to say
is a tragic read. It is an account of the incredible damage that firearms and guns have done through the history of civilization, from what happened in the Americas and Mesoamerica, and even to a certain extent what happened in Europe. But it is the damage against the indigenous people of the earth that breaks my heart. And these people were fierce, they were just outclassed and wiped out by the butchery of people, conquerors who came in and used automatic weapons on them. Even back then they had kinds of weapons that were automatic. And even Columbus was it appears to be that he was a butcher also. And the damage psychologically and physically of guns in our civilization is one of the great banes, and it just baffles me why we can't get changes and get them under control. It just baffles me. I don't know.
Yeah, and I get people calling in. In fact, usually it's these concerned trolls, right? They call in and say, "I'm a Democrat," and quack, 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 try to establish the bona fides, and then they'll say, "But if Democrats continue arguing we should ban all guns in America, then they're going to go down," and nobody's even proposing that. I don't know a single Democrat who's saying ban all guns. I've never said that. My book doesn't say that.
No.
Certainly there's a place for weapons, tragically, but there is. But some rational steps seems like a good idea.
We're paying a terrible price right now. It just, karma, I suppose. Even that's not an adequate term, but it's just we're all in shock about these things happening one after the other. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, it is. What's the old saying? We live in interesting times. We have seen the fossil fuel debate, or the carbon in the atmosphere debate, be hijacked by the fossil fuel industry. We've seen the gun debate be hijacked by the gun industry. It's like industry after industry using corporate personhood to just twist the world.